All right, viewers, we are now cutting live to Tianjin at the venue of the SCO Summit, where India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping. Both leaders shook hands and are now holding a bilateral on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. Let's take a look at some of the visuals that are coming in at this hour. These are visuals that are coming in from Tianjin. And that's the handshake that we're seeing, which has now taken place in Tianjin. The last time the two leaders shook hands was in Kazan. That's where the trend started. The ball started rolling. You see National Security Advisor of India sitting next to the Indian Prime Minister as the delegation from both the countries are holding talks. The bilateral is going on. And to get a better understanding of what to expect, I'll now cut across to our Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibal. He's there in Tianjin in the midst of all the action. Let's cut across to Siddhant. Siddhant, if you can hear me, we saw how the ball started rolling ever since Kazan. Gave us a sense of what to expect going forward, or whatever you've picked up since you're there in the midst of it all.
Well, the first big development of the day has started. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping are holding meeting here in Tianjin, where I am, and the meeting is underway. The first visuals are in right now, and we're witnessing how both leaders are having conversations, but we are yet to know what are the conversations. But we do expect a briefing by India's Foreign Ministry later in the day to give details about that big bilateral. Now, essentially, this is the second time that both the leaders are meeting in a year's time, and it is seen as a reset in India-China relationship after a gap of 4.5 years when the relationship went southwards, primarily because of the WION incident. But what we saw last year in Russia on the sidelines of the Kazan BRICS summit was a bilateral meeting, something that many were expecting will not happen. And since then, there have been a lot of efforts from both sides, including high-level visits. In fact, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in India just this month. The Indian Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, the Indian Defence Minister, Rajnath Singh, the Indian NSA, all of them have been to India, have been to China from India for key SCO meetings. And it was expected at the end of the day that the Prime Minister will also travel. But there is, of course, the shadow of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's tariffs are something that is concerning for India and for China. But how much they will able to bring together, especially when China and India have more divergences than convergences. In fact, one of the key concerns from the Indian side is cross-border terrorism, and of course the issue of as to how Pakistan continues to aid abet terrorism in India, and that is something that of course is expected to be raised. But what Indian officials have made it clear that this visit to China is for a multilateral aspect, and this is the key focus from their side. How much it will take to reset in the relationship is something that is to be known only when there are deliverables, especially on the ground at the border. But I can say just for India, once bitten, twice shy. That's the case for India. And of course, while India is facing the wrath of Donald Trump's tariffs, India will not be keen to be very close to China so far because of China's alignment with Pakistan. So there are several dynamics at play when it comes to a global and regional order. But one thing India has been going on,
Understood.
the mantra India has been carrying forward is multipolar world and multipolar Asia.
Siddhant, thanks so much for making all that very concise for all our viewers as well. We'll be coming back to you for more details as they come in from Tianjin. You're in the heart of the action, and we are tracking all those developments. As of now, there is a bilateral going on between the two delegations from both India and China. Both leaders are there. We'll discuss this a little forward and take this forward with our guest who's joining us live, Ambassador Meera Shankar. Ambassador Shankar is a former Indian envoy to the US. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Siddhant made some very key points. There are more divergences than there are convergences when it comes to India and China. What I'd also like to add to that is that handshake in Kazan happened much before Trump 2.0. So regardless of how much that Trump shadow looms over both nations in terms of tariffs, there has been an effort which started much before that, to come together. But once bitten, twice shy. What do you expect post this bilateral, which is happening before the summit even started? Ambassador Shankar, we're unable to hear you. If you can, I think you'll at least need to All right, we'll try to reconnect with Ambassador Shankar there. All right, Ambassador, we'll come back to you. I believe you heard me and would like to hear from you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, now we can hear you. Please go ahead. All right, we'll try to reconnect with Ambassador Shankar. We'll be keen to hear how she sees these developments going forward. But just to reiterate all that we did discuss right now with our Assistant Director for Foreign Affairs, who's there in Tianjin, this meeting, this bilateral, which also holds India's National Security Advisor sitting right next to the Indian Prime Minister, as you can see in the visuals as well. The two leaders, they've already had that handshake. The previous handshake in Kazan had set the ball rolling. But of course, there are a lot of gaps. There have been a lot of gaps. The recent history, the past history is not been too great, but there have been enough efforts now to get the two sides towards more convergences that there have been in the past. Just to give you a better understanding of where we stand right now, Indian Prime Minister is in China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, for those of you. And the bilateral between the two leaders is currently going on. All right, let me now once again try to reconnect with Ambassador Shankar. She's there with us now. Ambassador Shankar, my question essentially meant, what we've seen so far in the recent history, but then there was a change after Kazan when the two leaders shook hands. Now they've shaken hands again. What do you foresee going forward? All right. We'll come back to Ambassador Shankar because we're keen to know what she feels about it. Some technical issues, they keep happening. We'll come back to this. And the SCO Summit is currently going on. For anyone who's just tuning in, the Indian Prime Minister is in China. It's the first visit of the Indian Prime Minister to China in 7 years. A big step forward for both countries to come together, India and China. Enough tensions have prevailed since 2020, since Galwan, but now things seem to be on the mend.